FM News Talk 97.1.
On demand audio.
Hey, Republicans.
Allman in the morning. Common Sense Radio.
That's right, everybody. Hey, if you didn't like my singing at 8:10 with the Rascal Flatts, it's going to be a long week for you. Rascal Flatts, very entertaining band, by the way. All right. The other thing about that White House Correspondents' Dinner is you see all the pictures, and then there's Al Sharpton with Michael Steele, yucking it up. It's like, really? I mean, and again, it's not like I can't grow up and enjoy, friendly rivalries, but, politics ought to be more of a blood sport, and there shouldn't be any of this stuff going on.
Well, Michael Steele works for MSNBC. That's his gig, not the RNC. And honestly, I'll say this. I think that in a lot of ways, the so-called drive to more conservatism movement, I think in a lot of ways they treated him unfairly. In certain ways, I understand what they're upset, but it got to the point where they started blaming him for everything and gave him credit for nothing.
Yeah.
Like Jimmy Dimmick comes on and says, well, we didn't win. Christine O'Donnell and them didn't win because of him, but doesn't give him any credit for the congressional victories. That's not cool.
Well, it's too bad, though. What happened was Michael Steele didn't wind up saying, well, yeah, blame the black guy. When he should have just said, no, Christine O'Donnell was an idiot. That's why she didn't win.
Sometimes he didn't say idiot, but
well,
yeah, he did question
should've.
the viability.
Oh, come on. These Tea Party, some of these Tea Party people, the people that were
terrible.
Up there were
Joe Miller, man, I almost shot myself listening to him talk.
Bat crazy.
And
Ken
Buck.
Yeah, I mean, So anyway, so you're right about that. I mean, he did get somewhat of a raw deal.
And he works, and that's his meal ticket now, kicking it with Rachel Maddow and Ed Schultz. I mean, he takes a Republican point of view, but that's his business.
Yeah. All right, so the New York Times, and the front page article is how Apple sidesteps billions in taxes. Now, I talked to Shabani about this earlier, and what I want to tell you is this. These guys are making the case for lower corporate taxes, and not only that, for a doing away with the current tax code we have. But they do an article, and it must be, my heavens, it's 70 column inches. And it never occurs to the New York Times to actually address those issues. Instead, what the New York Times does is they treat Apple as if they're, first of all, committing a crime by evading taxes. And it's not, even using the word evading is really wrong because it's all legal what they're doing. The other thing is that the New York Times makes it out to be that Apple somehow is stealing money from the state of California and the federal government by deciding to set up shop in lower corporate tax rate states and lower corporate tax rate countries. Right. When the reality is they're looking at the solution right in their face. Lower corporate taxes in the United States of America. Now, the problem is, though, when you're a liberal rag like the New York Times and you're supporting liberal Marxist politicians who make it their business to steal money from productive people and hand it out to lazy jackasses, that's the kind of story you're going to get. A story making it out to be like, well, this isn't California's problem that they have too big of a budget. The problem is that Apple just isn't fueling enough of their over-budgeted budget. And that's the kind of reporting you get from the New York Times. There's not one addressing of this. And in fact, they go so far as to say, actually, we need to, it's not do away with the tax code. We need to change the tax code so that it adapts more to the digital age. So they want actually, and not the industrial age. Can you believe that kind of stuff? You read the article?
Oh, yeah, I read it. And the funny thing about the article is they describe specifically how they do it. And like you said, Jamie, they talk about how, well, California's tax rate's around 9.8, about 9%. So they just go to Nevada and they make it sound so bad. All you're saying is, well, guess what? You should probably have Nevada's tax rate.
Exactly.
And the only problem I have with some of these Republicans is they need to make the case as clear as the New York Times does.
Yeah.
Then they go, oh, they sent it to Netherlands. Then they sent it to the Ireland. And I go, you just made the case again and again.
Right. And in California, instead of acting as if, the problem is California can't be like Nevada because they're handing too much money out to people who don't deserve it. So their budget is too high.
Right.
So they can't lower their tax rates because they're trapped. Because we build these gigantic budgets. Mm-hmm. The U.S. has the same problem. The federal government has the same problem. You have this gigantic government, and now you have to have something to keep feeding the beast. And so you can't adjust. You can't lower taxes because you got to keep feeding the beast. And then you have people like Obama and the New York Times acting like we have some kind of national income here. That everybody making their income has to, like, for instance, turn it over to the federal government so the federal government can figure out a way to spend it or not spend it or give some back to you.
Well, every time they talk about a tax cut or a tax credit, they say it's costing the government money. Right. That's like saying, hey, Jay, loan me $10. No, well, you just cost me $10. Doesn't make any sense. My money isn't your money.
Right.
And unfortunately, I think someone on the right made the same mistake. When you look at the stimulus budget, they keep saying, oh, he spent $780 billion. What they should have, because $288 billion of it were tax cuts. Now, they may not have been the tax cuts that you might have said, look, those $288 should have been more comprehensive and broad-based, but the Republicans trying to bust the Democrats fell into that trap and set them up to make that statement.
Well, particularly during the entire, and that's the problem, particularly during the primary, where you had people like Newt Gingrich, who I think was traitorous to that idea. And then you have people like Santorum who were crapping all over Mitt Romney because of, A, the money he made, the houses he owns, the renovations he did on his house, all that kind of thing. And so, they'll be using all of that against Romney. Yeah. And what happened is Santorum and Gingrich and these guys just simply gave the Democrats sound bites they could use going into November on this matter.
Newt Gingrich said he was fighting against the elite media. The elite media helped him by trying to frame him as a conservative when he's not.
Absolutely. But anyway, this Apple story, and it's making its way all over even Fox News is reporting it dutifully that Apple somehow is taking candy from the baby. That is the federal government. Your phone calls are welcome, 969-9797.